Welcome to Crossroads. Texas is pulling $8.5 billion in investment out of BlackRock over its policies for environmental and social governance, ESG. It argues that the policies of BlackRock are destructive to key industries, and the divestment follows other states also pulling funds out of the multinational investment company. Now look, this comes amid a broader pushback overall against ESG and related programs to it, as the system is being deemed a way of forcing businesses basically to follow policies on investment and so on that could be financially damaging to the businesses. Maybe they don't want to do these types of things, but they're forced to by the investors. And of course, the decisions they're being forced to make may not actually reflect what's needed or what people actually even want to buy. In other words, they're forcing companies in some instances to fail, and they're targeting key industries and trying to tear down key industries. That's what the accusation is, at least. Let me show you this first. Washington Examiner says that Texas will pull some $8.5 billion in investments from BlackRock over its ESG policies, the biggest such divestment after several Republican states have moved to cut ties with firms that conservatives see as privileging liberal goals. And it's a Texas State Board of Education Chairman Aaron Kinsey announced the move on Tuesday, yesterday, a couple days ago. A letter was sent to BlackRock this same day notifying the world's largest money manager, and it said the divestment was done to comply with the state's anti-environmental, social, and governance law, which prohibits states' investment in companies like BlackRock and others that Republicans say boycott energy companies. And Texas is all about that oil, right? And they say, quote, BlackRock's dominant and persistent leadership in the ESG movement immeasurably damages our state's oil and gas economy and the very companies that generate revenue for our permanent school fund, Kinsey said. Now, I want to go deeper into this real quick, though. I know Hunter Biden's associates testified before Congress yesterday. I'll be going that into a minute, so folks who are here take might stick around. Real quick, too, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble. We're doing the full episode on all these channels today, so stay tuned as well. But I want to talk first about what's happening more broadly with BlackRock and the whole ESG agenda, because what just took place in Texas is part of a bigger push. You're seeing this not just there, but it's actually part of a trend. I mean, case in point, Florida pulled out of BlackRock back in 2022. Now, Reuters noted back then that Florida's chief financial officer said that at the time that his department would pull $2 billion worth of its assets managed by BlackRock, Inc., and noted that it opens a new tab, the biggest such divestment by the state opposed to the asset manager's environmental, social, and corporate governance policies, ESG. They note that further in a statement, Florida CFO Jimmy Patronis said, quote, Florida's Treasury Division is divesting from BlackRock because they have openly stated they've got other goals than producing returns. In other words, it's a company that has been able to manage people's money, making investments that you think are going to be good for your retirement or good for your state. You know, the reason why states or even the federal government puts your pensions in investment funds is because you're expecting to see returns on it. You know, how many of you who have pensions or have been working your whole life trying to put money towards your retirement, would you want that money to be growing or shrinking, right? Would you want that money to be under an asset manager that's making investments trying to increase your wealth? Or would you rather have them sacrificing the potential of making money and, of course, making your retirement better or your life better in order to push for environmental goals? That's the problem people are having with BlackRock. Now, other states have been on this as well. This was Arizona, for example, in 2022, around the same time as Florida. Fox News noted that Arizona Treasurer Kimberly Yee said in a statement released at the time, the state Treasury's Investment Risk Management Committee began to assess the relationship between the state's trust fund and BlackRock in late 2021. And noted that in response to those findings, Yee noted that Arizona began to divest over $543 million in BlackRock money market funds in February 2022 and, quote, reduced our direct exposure to BlackRock by 97% over the course of the year. And Yee added that Arizona will continue to reduce our remaining exposure in BlackRock over time in a phased-in approach that takes into consideration safe and prudent investment strategy that protects the taxpayers. Now look, there was also North Carolina, there was Missouri, there was Louisiana, a whole long list of other states that have also made this move. Different states, even some of the federal government money, even some businesses and so on, they're pulling out of BlackRock because the issue is coming to the surface that people don't want ESG anymore. BlackRock is one of the biggest advocates of ESG, and BlackRock is making investments and making requirements meant to tear down certain industries like oil and gas, while at the same time strong-arming businesses in many instances in order to make them follow policies that are not beneficial financially. And again, the concerns with all these states are generally along the same lines. Now, BlackRock has also been trying to change the way it does business for some of these same reasons, but it still has influence over a ridiculous amount of money. I've heard mixed estimates on exactly how much. I've seen some estimates saying it still holds $10 trillion in managed assets. I understand that market cap is significantly lower than that. Money estimates are kind of all over the place, and so different estimates from different areas. But meanwhile, folks, something big happened yesterday I want to talk about. I want to give you a rundown of it. Former associates of Hunter Biden, the son of President Joe Biden, they testified before Congress yesterday. Remember, Hunter Biden was saying, I want a public testimony, not his exact words. But Hunter Biden himself was asking for a public hearing. And that public hearing is now taking place. It followed a series of closed-door hearings. Hunter Biden decided to not join that one, as did one of the key witnesses. Maybe they'll hold them for contempt of Congress, like the Democrats are doing against Republicans. We'll see. But I'll be talking about this and new updates to the Fani Willis case in this episode. Today is Thursday again, meaning we're going to do the entire episode on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, and Twitter, as well as Epoch TV. If you enjoy my show, also please still subscribe to Epoch TV. You'll be supporting my work and the work of others to get all the truth out that you're oftentimes not allowed to see otherwise. We, of course, have all that on EpochTV.com, EpochTV.com. Link in the description below. And again, thank you so much for supporting me. Before we go further, though, a quick word from our sponsor.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. Former associates of Hunter Biden, the son of President Joe Biden, testified before Congress yesterday. And folks, it was pretty dang significant. The public hearing followed a series of closed-door hearings. And for context on this, remember that Republicans in the House, after they took over the House of Representatives, they have launched an impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. Now, this is basically looking into some of the different claims against Biden, investigating the allegations against him to see whether they should vote to impeach Biden. And remember, also, just as some context to this, the Biden Justice Department appointed their own special counsel, mainly just focused on the classified documents case. That Joe Biden had been taking home classified documents before he was president, which, unlike Trump, meant that he probably did not have executive privilege at the time to do that, meaning it's a crime. Now, that special counsel said that Biden knowingly took and shared classified documents, but should not be criminally charged since he's suffering from serious mental decline and would basically be incapable of standing before a jury. Not even joking. But he's still running for president. And at the same time, the House impeachment inquiry is going beyond just the classified documents case. This is looking into the allegations around the Biden family mainly as a whole. and in particular about whether Joe Biden is tied to the activities of his son Hunter Biden and also to his brother as well. And the main concern here is that it seems there's evidence of it and there's claims of it that Hunter is essentially selling access to his father. The question is then, is Joe Biden aware of this, and does he have anything to do with it? According to people now testifying, the answer to those questions is yes. And if that is the case, this would be potentially a pretty serious crime, frankly. Fox News was giving live updates on the testimonies yesterday. I want to show you some of the highlights from that. Let me go over this. Now, on one of them it says that House Oversight Committee Chairman Representative James Comer said that he'll invite President Biden in the future now to testify on payments his family received from foreign companies. And he said, quote, "In the coming days," and again, this was last night, he said, "In the coming days, I will invite President Joe Biden to the House Oversight Committee to provide his own testimony and explain why his family received tens of millions of dollars from foreign companies with his assistance." And the last part's what's important. Because remember, the original argument was Biden had known, basically the whole thing was fake first, right? No, there's nothing to see here. Then they were like, well, there is something to see here, but Biden's not aware of it. Then the answer was, well, Biden's aware of it, but he's not involved. And now the allegations are Biden was involved. So we'll see what they come up with next. Regardless, the House Oversight Committee is asking Biden to now testify before Congress. And as he is facing an impeachment inquiry, they could actually have some ground to make him do it. We'll see whether he does it. But again, this follows the hearing on Biden's family's alleged influence peddling. Now, Fox notes that following the hearing, White House spokesperson Ian Sams said, quote, "That hearing was embarrassing for House Republicans, a total waste of time. It's time to move on from this sad charade. There are real issues the American people want us to address." Yeah, like the border, like inflation. I can think of a few things we'd like them to address, but the question is whether they're addressing them, right? Further in, though, it says this. Representative Jaron Muskowitz, a Democrat from Florida, a member of the House Oversight Committee, taunted Committee Chairman James Comer, as well as Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, to hold a vote on impeaching President Biden, claiming they would do so if they truly had and found enough evidence he committed high crimes and misdemeanors, which is, of course, the basis on which they will need to make the decision on whether or not they impeach Joe Biden. And he said, quote, "I believe with all the evidence he's gathered," this is one of the other quotes, "I believe with all the evidence he's gathered, yes, he's proven that Joe Biden has committed high crimes and misdemeanors," and that's according to one of the people who testified, Mr. Bobulinski. Now, Muskowitz also then asked if Bobulinski felt Comer and Jim Jordan had proven Biden committed high crimes and misdemeanors, trying to get him in a gotcha moment. And this is what Bobulinski said, quote, "I know that he committed high crimes and misdemeanors. I was involved and saw them happen." Major claims, folks. Bobulinski is going to be one of the main people probably testifying if Biden or Hunter or both end up, again, facing charges with this. He was, again, one of the business associates of Hunter Biden. And, of course, with that has communications, emails, text messages, the whole 9 yards, which he has been providing to investigators. And he was one of the big stars. You know, there were two folks testifying yesterday. The third one did not show up. And, of course, Hunter Biden was a no-show as well. But his testimony yesterday was pretty significant. He is directly claiming that both Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's brother, all of them he's accusing of crimes. Now, further in, it notes that former Hunter Biden associate Tony Bobulinski testified Wednesday that President Biden's brother, Jim Biden, admitted to him during a 2017 meeting that the Biden family was able to conduct its business despite the president's high profile because of, quote, plausible deniability. Bobulinski testified that his conversation with Jim Biden took place at the Peninsula Hotel in Los Angeles immediately following a conversation with Joe Biden in which the president, quote, thanked me for the work I was doing with his son and his brother and asked me to keep an eye on them. And he said, quote, "It's my understanding that you asked him how the Biden family does the business that they do. While Joe Biden is such a prominent political figure, what was Jim Biden's response to you?" That was according to Representative Jake LaTurner asking, again, Bob Berlinski this. And he responds, quote, "Correct. I was actually concerned and asked from a position of concern." And Jim Biden, again, Joe Biden's brother, his response was, quote, he says, "His response to me was plausible deniability," suggesting that Joe Biden believes he has plausible deniability. Now, further notes that Representative Nancy Mace used her allotted time during Wednesday's Joint House Oversight Committee and Judiciary Committee hearing, again last night and yesterday, of the House, again, firing off an intense round of yes or no questions aimed at President Biden's involvement in his son Hunter Biden's business dealings. And this is how it went. They said, quote, "Joe Biden has repeatedly claimed that he was not involved in Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, or any other Biden family business deals. Today, our witnesses have proved otherwise," Mace said at the conclusion of her questioning. And Representative Nancy Mace stated, based on answers from Bob Berlinski and the other person who testified, Galanis, also a Hunter Biden associate, that, quote, "Joe Biden has repeatedly claimed that he was not involved in Hunter Biden's, Jim Biden's, or any other Biden family deals. Today, again, our witnesses have proved otherwise." It notes that Tony Bobulinski, Hunter Biden's former business partner, said during the committee hearing, again, that he begged Representative Ro Khanna, a Democrat from California, and his staff to sit down with him to review the text message evidence he had on his BlackBerry cell phone regarding the alleged wrongdoings by members of the Biden family. It notes, of course, that Bob Berlinski was rejecting, they basically talked about some important things when it came to the quote-unquote big guy. This is important. Remember 10% for the big guy? And people are questioning, well, who is the big guy? Because this was one of the big claims that came out in the Hunter Biden investigations, that in some of his business dealings, he talked about a 10% kickback to somebody named the big guy. And this raised some questions of, well, if Joe Biden is the big guy, does that mean that Joe Biden is getting a 10% kickback from the deals of Hunter Biden? Well, the problem with that is we had to figure out who the big guy refers to. And this was among the more significant things in what took place during this hearing. It says that Tony Bobulinski, Hunter Biden's former business partner, said Wednesday during a House committee oversight hearing that, quote, "the big guy," referenced again in a 2017 email, was Joe Biden. And that refutes a claim made by the president's son, Hunter Biden, that he was not aware of who it was. He notes that during the hearing, Bobulinski was asked by Representative Jim Jordan, quote, "Who's the big guy?" And Bobulinski responded, "Joe Biden." Jordan asked, "You sure about that?" Bobulinski said, "I'm 1,000% sure, because when Hunter Biden did his deposition under oath, he said, 'I don't know who it is,' even though he was copied on an email that said H will hold 10% for the big guy. You sure the big guy is Joe Biden?" Jordan asked. Bobulinski said, 1,000%. And there's other text messages that back that up that the brave whistleblower, Gary Shepley, and Joe Ziegler have produced. Not from my phones, not from my BlackBerry that I took screenshots from. They took them from subpoenas directly from Apple's iCloud that back up the fact that Hunter Biden knew that that the big guy was Joe Biden. That's massive if that turns out to be true. Again, it's possible that Bobulinski will testify on this if charges are ever brought, and of course the evidence he suggests exist will of course have to be brought forward. That alone is one of the major, really serious accusations, folks, suggesting, according to him, that Joe Biden was getting kickbacks on the deals from Hunter Biden. Now, again, take it for what it's worth. This is one of Hunter Biden's former associates. And, we'll have to see what comes out in the court of law. Innocent until proven guilty, unless you're Donald Trump, apparently. But based on this, there was actually more. Bobulinski also accused Hunter Biden of lying under oath, and he also accused President Biden's brother of committing perjury, also by lying when he testified before Congress. Now, Devin Archer, another former business associate of Hunter Biden, didn't show up. He was supposed to be one of the key witnesses. We'll see if they can force him to show up in the future. You can technically call that contempt of Congress on him and on Hunter Biden, and maybe if Joe Biden doesn't show up either. But look, and again, we'll see whether executive privilege protects you from these things, because Democrats are saying it doesn't, meaning Joe Biden might face criminal charges if the Supreme Court determines that presidents don't have executive privilege. But look, we'll see whether Republicans actually push for contempt charges against them, because they tend to be a little more light-handed. The Democrats have gone the other way. They recently put Trump associate Peter Navarro in prison. Peter Navarro just went to prison. He actually had to submit himself to prison for charges of contempt of Congress because he refused to testify to the Democrat January 6th committee. And so Democrats have done it to Republicans. Will Republicans do it to Democrats? The door is open for it, because now you have Devin Archer, Hunter Biden, and others refusing to testify even when they're called to do so by Congress. Now, that said, some other stuff happening. I mentioned yesterday some of the updates on Fani Willis, the attorney, of course, in Georgia going after Trump. And, of course, she's under some legal pressure right now. They're trying to get her to step down. There was, of course, a decision she had to make to get rid of the guy she was allegedly having an affair with, who she then assigned to be in charge of part of the case against Trump. And she's also bringing charges against Trump. And based on that, she had to let him go, so to speak, in order to stay on the case. She did so, but now the Trump team is appealing this even further to get her taken off the case. If that does happen, there's a chance, potentially, we'll see where it goes, that it could be deemed like a mistrial or whatever else. There's a lot going on with this, let me tell you. Red State said that following the Friday decision by Fulton County Judge Scott McAfee regarding motions to disqualify District Attorney Fani Willis and her lead prosecutor and former love interest from the case involving former President Donald Trump and multiple other defendants over purported interference in the 2020 election, Trump and his co-defendants filed a motion seeking to have the judge's order certified so that they could appeal it immediately. And now McAfee ruled that Willis could remain on the case, but that in order to do so, she had to fire Nathan Wade. Wade withdrew from the case shortly after that. And now the defendants then moved for certification of McAfee's order to allow for an interlocutory appeal. Normally appeals, it says, may only be taken after the trial of the case is completed. However, in certain instances, a judge's ruling may be certified or deemed appealable so that the issue can be addressed on appeal before the case proceeds. Now, it notes that on Wednesday, McAfee issued a certificate of immediate review, thus greenlighting the immediate appeal of his order. And further, it notes that this will allow for the immediate review of McAfee's ruling by the Georgia Court of Appeals. Now, on this, what does it mean, right? Look, we'll see where it goes. The Court of Appeals could just decline. They could say, we're not going to take the case, right? There's a possibility with that. And then what's going to happen is that Fani Willis would be able to stay on the case. But they also risk that if the case is allowed to continue with Fani Willis, if they don't take the appeal, that even if she does get a guilty verdict in the end, the Trump team could actually say that there were issues with the case, request a retrial, and possibly get it because, again, of the conflicts of interest with Fani Willis and the public perception of that. In other words, it's more about, timing with this. It seems that the Democrats really want to get a guilty verdict of Trump before the elections, and there's a lot of issues with timing. All the cases are getting challenged because of many of the loopholes we've been discussing here from the get-go. Those are coming back to bite them, and they're pushing back the timeline on a potential charges or potential guilty verdicts, basically, because based on the people leading the cases, a lot of these have almost guaranteed guilty verdicts. We'll see, though. That said, the appeal would delay things. And it seems with many of the charges again against Trump, his opponents really want to get a guilty verdict before the elections because they believe, based on polling and data, that a guilty verdict would give Biden several points on the polls. But, even some Trump opponents on this note want Fani Willis off the case. They're trying to get her to just step down. Because even corporate media, even like the far left corporate media are calling for her to just remove herself from it because of this. They think she's holding it up, and they think that she is tainting the perception of this case, basically. Red State notes that despite McAfee's ruling that Willis could remain on the case if Wade were booted or resigned, the liberal media, the big corporate media, are not happy campers about the dumpster fire mess. It notes that further in, one of those unhappy campers is MSNBC contributor Andrew Weissman, a partisan left-wing hack, they say, who had a leadership role in special counsel Robert Mueller's Trump-Russia hoax investigation team. Weissman, it says, said that he does not think Willis has it in her to effectively continue her prosecution of Trump. Next up, CNN chief legal affairs correspondent Paula Reed, who called the ruling really a gift to President Trump and his co-defendants because they're not only going to fight this case on the merits, they'll fight it in the court of public opinion. Optics here matter, and they're right. The court of public opinion is watching this, and remember, it's the court of public opinion that will determine how this reflects at the polls. And if this is all really about, affecting election results, not so much about using justifiable law to go after somebody for committing crimes, what matters most in this is the optics. Further in, it notes that while the Washington Post called McAfee's decision a serious setback for Fani Willis, the New York Times, a Marxist-based newspaper that has advocated for Marxism, wrote that disqualification isn't the only threat to Fani Willis's prosecution. It notes that foremost, concerning the New York Times point, the State Bar of Georgia could disbar Willis if it can be proven that she indeed perjured herself on the witness stand or in sworn statements she submitted to the court about her romantic relationship with Wade. In other words, when she had to speak about this stuff, when she had to talk about her romantic relationship, her denials of that could come back to bite her. Because if it is shown that she misrepresented the facts, to say it lightly, she could possibly be disbarred or other things. And meanwhile, Trump is facing, again, several other legal challenges along these lines. There's also in New York, where they're going after his real estate and so on. There's an update on this. Breitbart said that New York Attorney General Letitia James on Wednesday requested an appeals court turn down former President Donald Trump's request to reduce or hold off collecting the bond amount of $454 million to cover a civil fraud judgment. They know that Trump must post a liquid, which is cash or securities, bond covering the full amount of the judgment to pause enforcement of the judgment. But 30 security companies told Trump that they would not accept real estate assets as collateral. What does he do then? Does he give them like $400 million in cash? I don't know. Trump's lawyers are raising this issue, and it notes further in that James could seek to freeze some of his bank accounts and properties if Trump cannot post the $454 million bond. And remember, Trump kind of needs his bank account because he's running for president. Further, it notes that enforcement against Trump could begin as soon as March 25th, just in time to rig the elections, right? It notes as well that New York State lawyers argued Wednesday that Trump did not explore every option to post bond. I'm sure he could just find $454 million laying around somewhere, right? And it says that they asked the court to reject Trump's request to postpone collection without bond while his lawyers work through the appeals process, the Associated Press reported. Now, look, last I checked, under the Constitution of the United States, excessive fines like this are unconstitutional. Frankly, there should be some constitutional problems with this, and we'll see if they actually challenge it, because just like a lot of other things we've been witnessing lately, a lot of it is basically exaggerations of existing law, novel interpretations, things we've never seen done before, right? We've never seen them use law like this. Things that are questionably legal, things that people would have no idea they were ever violating because nobody's ever been charged with the laws and the way they're being interpreted, and also other possible constitutional violations like, again, excessive fines and such like this. We'll see what happens with it. But the trend right now is all of it is breaking at the seams. All of it seems to be falling apart. And again, folks, I will be giving you updates as this all moves forward. Before we go to questions, real quick, I did a special report when I was in Chicago just recently. This is pretty important. Basically, There was a customs agent that held up Shenyun Performing Arts, a New York-based performing arts company. That may not seem like a big deal on the surface, but behind the scenes, this is actually a very big deal. Shenyun Performing Arts is blacklisted by the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party regards it as a threat to their power. And because of that, it's almost like a lightning rod for the CCP's consulates and agents and other individuals working on its behest, trying to stop through every means they possibly can. And as they try to stop it, the CCP in many instances is exposing its hand. Because of this, frankly, if you just look at the people trying to stop the show from taking place, you can spot the CCP's networks of influence. And one of the big concerns that just took place in Chicago was that there was a customs officer who held them up not based on US law, but under what appeared to be Chinese law, under the laws of the Chinese Communist Party, questioning people's religious beliefs, which is, last I checked, not constitutionally legal in the United States for them to be doing as an officer of the US government. Also accusing them of being political. Last I checked, being political is not an issue. Neither is, in this case, just calling out human rights abuses in China. If he believes that's political, I think that's deeply problematic because, again, it suggests that on these points, whether it's religious persecution or political persecution, this is a customs officer seeming to be enforcing the laws of the Chinese Communist Party through the role in government. Now, there are several different lawmakers calling for investigations into this. I did my own investigation. Let me show you the trailer for this. And again, you can all watch this. It's totally free. You can share it with your friends or family. Let me show you now. On March 11th, a U.S. citizen was traveling to Chicago O'Hare International Airport. She was stopped by a U.S. Customs and Border Protection officer. She was then allegedly questioned on her religious beliefs, accused of engaging in politics, and then harassed for her employment in a New York-based performing arts company.
As I was in there, I overheard him saying to his colleague that they're Falun Gong and they're political. He said really loudly, actually, are you being sponsored by the Falun Gong?
But concerns over the incident go beyond just the possibility of discrimination. The bigger concern is how this incident fits into a broader trend, where the Chinese Communist Party has been attacking Shenyun and aggressively trying to prevent the American company from performing.
From the CCP's perspective, Shenyun is a perfect storm to them. It goes right to the heart of the lies and the false narratives they've used to build up their power and to maintain their power.
And if these officers were working under the influence of the Chinese regime, that really would be a shocking development. There are background checks and a pretty extensive background check for CBP officers.
And if a customs officer is enforcing those standards right here in Chicago, it could represent a case of the CCP's laws being enforced in the United States. Laws that would represent a regime that brutally suppresses religion and basic rights. Hey, welcome back. All right, let's jump into some questions. So let's see, first of all, from JD Ransom, you're talking about BlackRock. You said that's quite a dent because Texas pulled out, remember? You say considering BlackRock has a market cap of over 110 billion, ouch, on a 9% drop. Texas is that big. Go Lone Star. Actually, I think they have a $125 billion market cap, but it's still like a pretty big dent, right? BlackRock, the numbers on it are kind of all over the place. I think they have like 10 trillion in managed assets, but I've also read different numbers on it. Regardless, it is a big deal. And regardless, there's a pretty big pushback against BlackRock happening at the state level, possibly the federal level. And again, even among businesses not wanting to be part of this whole ESG agenda. They're trying to rebrand ESG now, environmental and social governance. Basically, again, a way of using money from investors as a tool to strong-arm businesses in supporting environmental, socialist policies and so on that may not actually be financially valuable. But they believe that if they can, force enough people to change business practices, that by doing so, they can kind of control the way businesses function. That's all backfiring now. And even that action is being called into question on whether or not it's legal. So BlackRock is running into a lot of really serious issues with this. Dr. Winsmith, you're saying BlackRock is the investment company that is forcing various businesses and corporations to go woke. That's true. They buy substantial amounts of stock, then threaten the company into adopting stances that the corporation otherwise would not adopt. And again, one of the reasons why that's legally questionable is because of fiduciary duty. They have to act in the interest of what would gain profit for the shareholders. And if they're forcing businesses to do otherwise, that's possibly not legal. Not only, again, at the federal level, but even at the state level. And I think they risk even, well, as they're facing right now, state pushback on that ground, if not anything else. In Texas, though, remember the main thing is that they have a state law that they can't invest money in things that go against, like, basically the businesses of the state. Natural gas, oil being some of the big ones. Eric Claramella, you're saying, excellent news. BlackRock would love to be part of the one world corporate government. And I believe they are actually with the whole World Economic Forum types, right? The people trying to push for this multi-stakeholder form of government where the stakeholders in government are not just elected leaders, but also unelected leaders like investment firms and nonprofit organizations and big corporations. They believe that if they can push that agenda hard enough and if the UN can become the new global leader under a multi-stakeholder world, then the businesses, nonprofit organizations, woke investors like Bill Gates will have pseudo-governmental power if they realize their dream. Again, kind of a pipe dream in my opinion, but there are some individuals definitely pushing for it. Sandra Cohorst, you're saying, investments of hardworking Americans are expected profits, and expected profits should never be tied nor wasted on non-business ties such as DEI. Not in our pension plans, investment plans, ever. Great for Texas. Yeah, and actually it's concerning because, some of the pensions even for military service members under the federal government have been put into investment funds that go to China. And that's problematic because imagine if our own, you have our military, are they going to go to China? Are they going to go to war with China, for example, if their retirements are in Chinese assets? I think that creates some really serious problems. I don't think it should be legal personally. But aside from this, there are some pretty problematic things in terms of how our money is being used to support really not only hostile foreign government interests, but even within our own country and elsewhere, very woke policies. I personally do not believe that government money should be allowed to go towards politically partisan ventures. And I would consider BlackRock's ESG agenda to be in line with politically partisan policies. They're pushing an obviously very woke agenda, very far left agenda. And if government money is going towards that, that means that push and that form of activism does have a partisan role within our political debate. I think it should not be allowed for government money to go towards things like that. Cultured Yabo, you're saying BlackRock embodies the crony capitalism of the globalist dystopian trinity of Marxism, fascism, and crony capitalism. And Cultured Yabo, well described, because I would definitely put crony capitalism right up there with Marxism and fascism. Really, crony capitalism gets mistaken oftentimes for pure capitalism. And ironically, when kids these days, those Gen Zers, when they criticize capitalism or even support socialism in some regards, oftentimes what they're criticizing is not real capitalism. They're criticizing crony capitalism, which is capitalism corrupted through interventionist policy in many instances, or this public-private partnership type thing, which I would actually just equate with fascism. Or communist takeover of private business, which of course would be socialism, right? Seize the means of production. It is not representative of true capitalism or of a true natural market. Again, I think Austrian economics says it properly here. Ludwig von Mises, who I cite often, would call this state interventionism. The state is intervening in the markets. And because they're putting their finger on the scale that determines the winners and losers, they're messing with the nature of the free market. When they do that, they alter it, they pervert it, they corrupt the market. And that corrupted market means that things that would not be able to stand in a natural economy, right, like ESG, you can only do it if you have the force of government behind it, or the strong arm of, again, crony capitalism, whereby an investment firm with a very clear political goal, not a financial goal, is forcing businesses to do things that the public does not want. Because under a normal, healthy capitalist system, the businesses provide the people with goods that they want to buy. If you alter it, where the public is forced to adopt policies or whatever else that they don't want, because businesses are being forced from behind the scenes by this monopolistic investment firm, right, where they can't do business unless they adopt what are really political policies, not financial policies, that means that somebody is altering the debate. Somebody is interfering with the markets, and by doing so is corrupting the markets, providing us with products we don't want, like that weird, like tuck underwear for trans kids and so on, weird things like that. Or maybe trans influencers drinking beer and telling us how great it is. It's that kind of stuff the public obviously does not want. Look at the boycotts that these policies, investment policies and political policies, are kind of enforcing behind the scenes. Next question here, James Dyson. He's saying, how about America enforce its laws in China? Yeah. This is one issue I've been having too. I want to go into this tomorrow because I don't know if you saw it, Mexico is saying basically no returns. Hey, if the Supreme Court of the United States decides that Texas can enforce its own border laws, Mexico, the government of Mexico is pushing back on that, saying that Mexico will not accept people deported. How can they do that? How is it that a foreign government can tell us what we can or can't do? How is it that a foreign government can tell us that we can't enforce our own border laws? How is it that a foreign government can facilitate with criminal organizations on mass human trafficking and then lecture us about human rights and lecture us when we say that, hey, these people are violating our laws, they're going back? I think America is getting pressure from a lot of countries right now. We have European countries trying to force American social media companies to censor based on their laws. Since when do American companies have to follow the censorship standards of European socialist countries? Since when do American companies need to follow the surveillance laws and the security laws and the data laws of the Chinese Communist Party? Since when do American states have to follow foreign government laws that say that we can't even enforce our own border laws? Since when is America subject to foreign law? I think the United States needs to maintain its sovereignty on this and begin saying no and begin pushing back. Unfortunately, that area, diplomacy and foreign relations, is typically on the federal government. The federal government right now is more globalist, and they're allowing a lot of this to happen with very little pushback. The states, under normal circumstances, would not be the ones to have to deal with this. Look, you have Mexican companies. You have Mexico trying to sue gun manufacturers in the United States, blaming gun violence in Mexico on us, while they're poisoning tens of thousands of Americans, killing them every year with their fentanyl goods, right? Sending fentanyl to the United States and then blaming us for it because they say America is the #1 purchaser of fentanyl when they're the ones poisoning us. It's like, for example, the British blaming China before the Communist Party of being responsible for the opium wars because Chinese were buying opium, right? They were doing it as a form of warfare against China. Would it be right to blame them for it, or do you blame the British for the opium wars? In the same way, is it right to blame Americans dying by the tens of thousands from the poison flowing across our borders, or do we blame Mexico for profiting from it and allowing it to take place? That the government itself has been so corrupted by criminal organizations that they're almost indiscernible from each other. And rather than go after the criminals within their own borders, they're targeting us and blaming us as being responsible for allowing it to happen. Since when are we responsible for that? If they deem us responsible, I'd say America should take full responsibility for it and begin enforcing our laws there. Say, go after the terrorist organizations that have become the drug cartels and criminal networks which have placed their roots into the Mexican government. Maybe America should start pushing back on that front, frankly. And again, with all these issues, it's one big picture. Since when does Europe decide what can or cannot be said on social networks in the United States? Since when does China dictate our own laws? When will America push back and begin saying, we're not going to play these games anymore? Europe, you're going to follow our free speech laws. China, you're going to follow our open laws, or let our media in your country. Let our social media in your country, or you're cut off. When will America begin pushing back on this instead of taking it from every country while we give them money, while we pay them, while we give them specialized trade deals, while we lose on almost every one of these, where we basically subsidize their militaries, where we defend them, we do everything for them and get nothing in return? When will America stand on its own 2 feet and begin enforcing our own doctrine, which is based on freedom, not tyranny, rather than allow ourselves to be just terrorized by foreign tyrannical governments? I think the United States very much does need to begin enforcing our laws and respecting and forcing other countries to respect our sovereignty. The American people have been abused enough, I think, and I think it's time that we start standing up on our own 2 feet and pushing back. Rayans you're saying, why would they not use his property as collateral? Yeah, you're talking about Donald Trump. Speaking of the attacks on the American people. So yeah, it's very strange because under normal circumstances, you could use assets like, for example, real estate holdings as collateral. Donald Trump is, of course, facing charges in New York where they were saying that he overvalued Mar-a-Lago, and they made a ridiculously low estimate on how much Mar-a-Lago was worth, despite public reporting, despite financial firms, despite everything else, putting the value far beyond what Trump even estimated it as. And based on this, of course, are saying that he owes them $454 million, I believe. Trump not able to just give $454 million in suitcases or maybe a dump truck full of cash on the front doors of City Hall, is not able to do that. And of course, under normal circumstances, if you're like a billionaire, most of your assets are going to be in like things like real estate and so on. Trump is like a real estate mogul. That's where most of his money comes from. Under normal circumstances, he would be able to use his properties as collateral, but they're not letting him do it. So it's not normal, in my opinion. It's not normal what they're doing, and it does make you wonder, well, why are they doing things that are not normal? Why are they changing laws to let people go after him? Like, for example, even with the rape and defamation allegations. They had to change the laws to allow a loophole where statute of limitations didn't apply to even allow that case to happen. They're having to change the laws to allow the law to target him in ways the law has never been used before. It does make you wonder that maybe this is being done for extra legal means. I would say that by the very definition of extra legal, it applies to a lot of these things. It's novel interpretations of law. It's, again, changing of statute of limitations. It's using and making requirements that have never been done before and don't apply to other people. I would say that these are extra legal forms of political prosecution. And frankly, I do believe personally that it's being done for political purposes. I think the facts speak for themselves, frankly. U.S. citizen on the ground, you're saying if Biden wins election under Marxist rule, is it best to move out of cities of over 2 million? Well, that's one of the things that's encouraging about the United States, right? One of the things that's encouraging about the United States is that we have divisions of power, including not only among the federal government. We have 3 branches of government, the courts, the Congress, and of course the federal government, of course, the executive branch. We also have divisions of power at the state level between the state and federal government. We also have divisions of power on the local law level with the sheriffs, and divisions of power between the individuals and the government through, again, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, and good old Second Amendment, right? In case all of it gets overridden. Based on that, I do think that frankly, if the federal government becomes overly tyrannical, yeah, you might consider moving to a place that more reflects your views. There are, of course, states that will push back inevitably if the federal government adopts policies that people might not agree with. You can, in the United States, move to states that enforce things differently. One of the virtues of what America is, and I think a demonstration of the genius of the Founding Fathers. Laura Salva, you're saying, Josh, it looks and sounds like VVVV. You're talking about the Venezuelan flag emoji. Yeah, it seems we're becoming the new Venezuela, right? Yeah, we're becoming the new Venezuela. Lo and behold, the ghost of Chavez hangs over America. It is unfortunate, but America is adopting what would in the past be considered banana republic type policies: corruption, political corruption, election interference, and the whole 9 yards, and politicized attacks on, through the legal system against political opponents of the incumbent powers. I would actually say, this is my personal opinion, of course, right? In my personal opinion, I think there are different Marxist organizations that have looked at what worked in Latin America in terms of installing socialist or communist regimes. And they understand that the United States is, as much as we may not think of it, we're actually not that culturally different from some countries in Latin America. If you look at countries in Latin America, like up until like 50, 60 years ago, they were fantastic countries. A lot of them were some of the top rising economies in the world. They were just beautiful countries. And of course, socialism took root in many of them and tore them down. The cultural influence in those countries, again, a lot of them have more Portuguese and Spaniard influence, where the United States has more British and French influence, right? And of course, some other countries as well. Cultural mix, racial mix, these things are not that different between the United States and most of Latin America. In fact, a lot of Latin American countries were founded even before the United States, by a good 100 or more years in many cases. And because of that, I think there are people who understand that what worked in terms of installing socialist or communist regimes in Latin America might well work in the United States. And if you look at the models being used, the Chavez model and other things, it looks like they're trying to replicate a lot of that, frankly. One of the big defining differences we have between the United States and most of Latin America is very simple. America is more historically Protestant, and Latin America is more historically Catholic. That's one of the sole defining differences. And also, we have a different form of government in terms of the nature of our Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the definition of God-given rights here. Gina Mikulik, you're saying, are we going to be even worse than Venezuela? Well, we'll see about that. There's a resilience to the American system that I have deeply come to admire. I don't know what it is about the American character, but the things that they're trying to do are not really working so well. There's something in the American character that is anti-authoritarian almost to the core. And you can even make the whole country tyrannical, and I really wonder if many Americans would still go along with it. Some people suggest that maybe COVID-19 was a dry run for it. I don't know. I think a lot of Americans began to see through it pretty quickly. I think a lot of Americans began to just protest it very quickly. And I think the cultural pushback in the United States and the refusal to adhere to these things going forward made a cultural shift again where I don't know if they could ever replicate that. There is something in the American character that is inherently independent. There's something within us that makes us immune in many ways to tyrannical government. I can tell you with myself, I'll never live under tyranny. I'll never live under tyranny. I might die under it, but I'll never live under it. And I believe a lot of Americans feel the same way. You know what I mean? Symphonic Ellen, you're saying Kissinger screwed up a whole lot. I personally think that Kissinger did not screw up. I think Kissinger did exactly what he meant to do, but screwed all us up through what he meant to do. I believe that Kissinger was one of the more evil men of the 20th century, frankly. California gal, you're saying, I work at an academic institution and we use TIAA CREF. I have some choices within that for where my money goes. I wouldn't be surprised if they were invested in China. I don't know specifically on that one, but it is worth looking into, actually. Yeah. I think it is worth looking into. See, folks, if you work in a company that has, you have a pension, you should look into where the money is going. And if you find it's going to something you don't believe in, you should bring it up. One of the things that I've seen over the past few years, my understanding of what this country is has changed a bit. That the American system is based around the concept of, it sounds like we're just repeating slogans, but let's say it, government, by the people, of the people and for the people. That means you. That means me. We are the basis of the American system, the individual. The basis of the United States is the individual. And people wonder, well, how do we have so many problems with government? Maybe it's because the individual and the average American have disengaged too much from the political processes. If the average people disengage from political process, who's going to take it over? Well, you're going to have cliques and organizations and people who have other agendas co-opting it for their own interests. The American people, that's our system, right? That's the basis of our government. That's the basis of the Constitution. That's the idea on which America was founded. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. You and myself and others. Social engagement, political engagement, and these things are the basis of the American system. And so you need to make your voice heard. You need to get engaged somehow, because that is what makes this country work. That is the basis on which the freedoms we enjoy are founded. And again, I think that's where the real hope in this country is. It's on the individual realizing the kind of country we have, frankly. And that the kind of country we have, to sustain it, requires us to be involved in it, frankly. Let's see, Ashley from California, you're saying, will China start funding all the different needy countries like the U.S. does, since they want to replace the U.S. as the world superpower? The CCP is taking the opposite approach. The CCP is subjugating them with debt traps. They're tricking them into making bad, investment deals and so on with the Belt and Road Initiative. The CCP is basically like colonialism on steroids, and they're basically turning countries into puppet states of the CCP. They're getting them into debt traps again, where they're offering them deals to build their infrastructure. The deals are made in such a way where the countries will never really pay back the debt. They give bribes to the government officials in order to sign the deals that are bad for the country in the future. The governments of these countries are signing these deals, selling off the futures of their countries and selling off the sovereignty of their nations in many instances. The CCP then moves in, builds the assets using their own workers, meaning the money goes right back to China anyways, uses their own workers, and then manages in many instances the thing they build afterwards. If you understand the nature of economics, the way that money works is if you pay someone to do a job, the money doesn't disappear. The money continues to flow, right? The person you pay pays taxes on the money. The person you pay pays rent and pays their bills and buys other things. And that money, once they buy other things, goes to other individuals who then pay taxes, pay rent, pay their bills, and so on. All of which, and buy goods, all of which flows into the economy. That's the way money works, is almost like the lifeblood that keeps an economy flowing. But when you have money get siphoned out of a country into another country, it has the effect not of strengthening this country, but of strengthening others, which is one of the reasons why I have problems with remittances. I have problems with, for example, bad trade deals. I have problems with the United States sending money to every corner of the earth. I understand part of the thinking of that is to get them to use the US dollar and to make sure the US dollar remains as the world reserve currency, which does benefit us, yes, in the end. But there are problems with this in terms of the lifeblood of the United States being siphoned out through bad deals. The CCP does the opposite. They make sure that when they do business deals, it continues flowing within their system. Under normal instances, you would have trade deals and so on that are mutually beneficial. The United States oftentimes does this at a loss. It hurts us for the most part rather than helps us. The CCP does it in a way that oftentimes victimizes the nation, where it helps them rather than the host country. I believe that maybe we need to find a middle ground with the way the U.S. does business, where we make deals, but we make sure that the American people benefit also. Sure, big corporations benefit from some of the trade deals we have, letting them build, cheap goods in China using slave labor, or building things in Mexico or Canada, which destroys local industry but benefits the big companies because they could do it cheaper, and then get state subsidies or whatever else, trade benefits for doing it. I think the American people too often get screwed over by these things, while big government and big corporations tend to be the ones that benefit from it. I believe that the American people are the ones who end up losing out on most of these things. And this crony capitalist system, cronyism, which is one step away from, I think, socialism and fascism, frankly, needs to be dealt with. We need to change some of these policies in order to ensure the American people themselves are benefiting from these things. Really, it's our lifeblood that ends up being used for to subsidize a lot of things we might not agree with. And maybe that's part of the political shift happening right now. Personally, I think that the global political shift we watch taking place right now is, in fact, about the average person, the average citizen, demanding that they start benefiting and begin to be represented by the things that we've empowered through our taxes and through government. Folks, that said, please don't forget to share this episode. Thank you so much for being here. Again, Crossroads, we are only made possible by viewers like you, because you might notice we don't exactly have a whole lot of advertisements, and we're still demonetized by YouTube. Big thanks out to our sponsor, of course, American Heart for Gold, which is also helping. But really, folks, you all here are the ones making this possible. It's mostly, again, subscriptions that make this show possible. If you're on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Twitter, please consider going over to Epoch TV and subscribing. And not only will you help us continue doing the work we're doing, it'll also help us do a lot of our other great content, documentaries, investigations. Notice that I'm on the road a lot. And also on that note, too, you can watch some of our great and very important content. I like to joke that I'm on the banned topic beat because, frankly, it's the topics we're not supposed to talk about that tend to be the most important ones. Again, I have a documentary coming out very soon on the border crisis, explaining what's behind it, the policies guiding it, the agreements you're not being told about, and showing it to all of you exactly how it all works. That'll be out very soon. That'll be only on Epoch TV. So again, folks, thank you for your support. Please, again, if you haven't gone there yet, check it out on Epoch TV. And that said, as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.